Welcome, everybody. This is the official global kickoff of the Online Peace Month of the Building Bridges movement, just brought together with five wonderful colleagues and teammates of mine, Asha, Carlijn, Femke, Daphne. And we are so happy to have with us Dr. Betty Uribe. And actually, she's traveling, so she freed her time in, I would say, the middle of her night to be a contribution to building bridges, connecting worlds. So, Dr. Betty, it's up to you, and just to kick the whole thing off in your unique way.
Thank you so much, Ninke. It's such a pleasure to be here and such an honor. As I woke up this morning, very early this morning, I was thinking, today's the beginning of Peace Month. And if you think about what that means and the role that each of us plays in our world and what is really happening in the world today, I think it's very apropos and very interesting that we happen to be celebrating Peace World in a time when so many things are happening. We are in an interconnected world, and the world has become more and more flat as we continue to go through this pandemic. And we've learned so many things from the pandemic. So as we take a look at the interconnecting world, we see so many things happening that are outside of our control. We see earthquakes. We see things in Africa, in India, in Afghanistan that are going on. In North America, just alone in my world, we have fires, we have hurricanes, we have riots, we have so many different things that are going on. And yet we go back and take a look at what is within our control. And how can we affect change? When you think about building bridges, what that means is connecting one world with another. And how are we able to build those bridges within the world that we have? You know, Mother Teresa said, I can't change the world, but I can change my world. And so how can we, every single one of us, come in and bring everything we have to connecting? What does it take to connect? And so we're going to talk a little bit about how do we connect at a deeper level with one another. Here we are. There are many countries represented here, many places, many worlds. Each one of us has a different world that we bring to the table. How do we bring 100% of ourselves to the table in order to build bridges, break down walls, and really connect people, not just in all over the world? Some of us feel like, oh my goodness, I can't connect the world, but we can connect our world. So I'm so excited to be part of this amazing group of very dedicated leaders and to be able to touch every corner of the earth and connect with each of everyone that is here. So many passionate leaders that are here to really build bridges. Thank you so much, Ninke, and this entire team for inviting me.
Thank you for this great opening words. And we will have this as a kickoff of a whole month of inspirational interviews where we really make sure we highlight all angles of what's possible in building bridges. So, and I know, Dr. Betty Uribe is one of them. And we have the last indigenous leader in Europe. We have a young girl talking about digital waste. We have peace builders. We have Dr. Sila Awardi and Dr. Betty Uribe bridging the peace and the business side. Because for the ones who don't know Dr. Betty Uribe, she's an author, she's a business leader, she's one of the most influential Latinas in America. and she wrote a book. And her book is who she is. It's called Values. So, Dr. Betty, can you tell me more about values? And you dedicated that latter part of your career to exploring this question: what are values? And you really made it into the tenets of values. Can you share more about that? Um, I will leave it up to you. What can you share with us? What's its value for this group, this world? What can you share?
Well, if you think about, and it's very simple, what is it that we value most in our life? And so values come into place the moment we're born. And a lot of us were taught something that was important when you were little. The things that people taught us: don't, share, give, smile, be courteous, shake people's hands. And as we're growing up, we are taught different things that are important in different communities. When you go to somebody's home, you bring something. You give flowers when it's people's birthday. You celebrate. You're courteous, and then you get into a professional world where the values of each company, or the values of each community, or the values of each world that you visit. If you go to China, the family values are really important. If you go to South America, music and culture are really important. So values play a role as a parent. Values play a role as a head of household. They play a role as a community. So in Nikki, you and I have spoken before about, you begin with the family, in the value system with a family, and then you extend that to a community, the value system of a community. You bring that now to a municipality, and then you bring that to a government, and then you take that to the world. So it begins with self, and then it continues outward. And so what is most important to you? I've had several opportunities in my life where defining moments are the moments that you get in tune with what's truly important to you, and aligning your life cohesively in an integration with what is most important to you creates that peace, not just for you, but other people. And it really helps to build those bridges when you have incongruency between your espoused values, what you deem is important to you, and what you talk about that is important. When there is incongruency between that and your actions, that is where conflict begins. That is where people don't know what is it that they're talking about, what is it that they mean. So values plays a very significant part in all of our lives. And it's really what's important to you. So I often ask you, what are the top 5 most important things in your life? And, so many people will look and say, well, I'm not sure. I was at a conference with 1,000 business leaders, and I said, if I were to ask you to write down your top 5 core values, would you be able to just spit them out like that? For me, my 5 core values are very simple. And it's my own belief system. It's God, family, job, education, health, and community. Very simple.
Can you repeat that a bit more slow, but so we can digest that and just think about our own our own perspective, because you do this in a blink, but I think it's important.
It's God for me. It's my relationship, spirituality. Family comes right after, and then health. And health has come in front of education as of lately with COVID. My husband just recovered from COVID, and I had a bad case of COVID in January. So all of a sudden, you start thinking about health and education and community. So if you think about that, how do those values play into your life? How do those values play into how you make your decisions? So if something is happening, where do you go to center yourself? What are your core values? How do you lead your life? How do you make decisions? Those are what I would call your core values.
I get it. I totally get it. And if we look in today highly polarized world, um, it's so obvious. And but the interconnected world, it's also the reality of today. What is the best way, in your opinion, to build the physical bridges? Now, this is online too, you know. What do we do?
We have an interconnected world, and you mentioned that just a little bit ago. There's so much. There is. I'll tell you a story. I was called to come to the World Bank and to create a conversation, building bridges between physicists from PhDs from all over the world. So if you think about 36 people from 36 different countries, the brightest minds of the world in one room, and the idea of this group, they were in charge of the audit for all of the World Bank projects around the world. So if you think about putting yourself in their minds, and they're very analytical PhDs, and each one of them came with a different paradigm, with a different world in their mind. And their job was to audit all of the projects of the World Bank. And if you know the World Bank's what they do is to really eliminate or diminish famine around the world. And so each project is different. So they're looking at the projects from a myopic way. In the middle of the first day, one of the gentlemen says, I asked them, I said, do you know what the core values are of the project groups that are out in the ground, on the ground in each of the countries, say in Africa? They put together a working group, and that working group is working based on the project, based on the budget that's being given to them. And so this group of people is in charge of analyzing, auditing the project and saying, you know what, based on the data and based on the results, you may have more money or this project is cut off. So they looked at, for the most part, at the beginning of the conference, they were looking at each project from a quantitative data standpoint. What I mean by that is they looked at, are they within budget? How much have they eliminated the famine? But they weren't looking at the qualitative piece of the project. The qualitative is, are you increasing how people feel about their country? Are you increasing how people feel about each other? Are you building bridges between your tribe and another tribe? Are the girls that you're giving scholarships to, are they now bringing in the parents? And are the parents now speaking to one another instead of meeting with each other with arms to literally kill one another? Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. And so one of the women says, raises her hand, and I said, do you know what the core values are of the different projects that you are managing and the people in those projects? And one of the persons says, well, you know, that's fine, Dr. Betty, but that's not what we do here. We just don't do business that way. And the other individual raised their hand on the other side and said, on this other side of the room, this gentleman stands up and says, yes, but isn't it about time that we change the way we look at things? In that moment, I began to see the paradigm shift that happens in one's mind when we open up our mind to see a different paradigm, to see a little light coming in, and to experience something from a different perspective, to open ourselves up, to look at something from the other person's point of view. To make the story short, the second day, at the end of the conference, one of these individuals, we put them through different exercises. At the end of the conference, this woman says, I just want to share with the group that my wife and I are about to have a baby. Now, you've got to understand, these individuals didn't know each other. They'd been working together for a long time. They did not know each other. And for someone like that to say to a group of other PhDs that are, and we call them eminence, right? So people that are just so highly thought of in their country, they have a lot to lose if they say the wrong thing, if they're not accepted in this group. This is a big deal. And she says, my wife and I are about to have a baby. For something like that to happen, there were hugs, there were tears by men and women alike from all countries. And the group gathered together. Some of the conversations I had, and I'm just so humbled to have been part of this amazing opportunity. Building bridges is an understatement for something like that. They said to me, you just changed the way we do business in the world. You just changed the way we look at projects. You just changed the way we are eliminating famine. Now they were open to let the group into their hearts and into their minds and to really understand the qualitative portion of each of the projects. So I think that was just a prime example of what is possible. And I'm talking about the globe, but let's put that back into our own world. I'm an executive and I run a $250 billion operation, 10,000 employees. And so when I visit with each of my groups, I'm in San Francisco right now, visiting with some of my team. When I visit with each of my groups, it's a world. Every mind, every individual brings to the table a different world. My background is different from your background. I'm an immigrant from Bogota, Colombia. My experience growing up and coming into North America was a total different experience than the next person that also grew up in a different country going into Luxembourg or going into Germany or going into India or Africa or any other country. So we can affect the world of someone by really getting them to really realize that we're in the people business. We're in the human business. You know, in banking, I talk to my team about money and loans and all of that. And I tell them, we're not in the money business. We're in the people business. And I don't care what business you're in, you are in the people business. You are in the humanizing the people experience business. And when we come to a common ground, humanizing the people experience, that is where the miracles happen. That is where the magic happens. We call it pixie dust of goodness. That's where we're able to spread that pixie dust of goodness all over
I
the
think
world.
is an ultimate of building bridges and connecting world if you spread this. And what I know from you, and just want to highlight that it's really in the listening, you know, that's my theme. Listening to what's really going on. That's what I hear in your story about the World Bank as well. So it may look difficult, but you always say it's simple, isn't it?
It's always simple. It's not always easy, but it's always very simple. So when you break it down to the simplest common denominator, I said 5 words to all of you. I said my core values. And so when you think about it, when you make your decisions and when you lead those decisions on what your real core values are, when you're able to deduct and get what's critically most important in your life, and you lead your life and you lead your decisions in that way, then all of the decisions are so simple. The times when I've made mistakes in my life are the times when I don't take the time to pause, think, align myself, make sure that I remember, my goodness, these are my core values. I'm going to make these decisions based on what is most important in this moment, what is most important to our team. I created a strategic leadership decision model in my dissertation, and I actually watered it down so that it could be understood in the book. And it's so simple to bring a decision to the table in a group of people and say, what core values are we going to utilize to make this decision? If it is between two groups, what core values? Maybe the core values to make a decision is, I want everybody to feel valued and respected. Maybe the core decision, another decision is, I want the customer to feel like we are here for them, and I want to create a win-win, not a win-lose, but a win-win. And maybe the core value is, I want to compromise. We both get to compromise and come to a mutual understanding. Whatever the core values are, when you create those core values mutually inclusive, and then you bring to the table those core values, it becomes so simple. It becomes very simple.
I hear that, and you're very successful at it, and also in your teams, the people you lead, and also in your personal life. But if we look at inclusivity and diversity, even leadership, is there anything from your perspective what you can bring to this group?
Well, diversity is something that, and inclusivity is something, again, so simple. When I came to Chase, before making the decision to come to JP Morgan Chase to run this organization, I had left banking, and I had the opportunity to take a look at the coming into banking again, which was not something that I had planned at all. And so I set out to do a cultural study, and I did a study on the core values of the company. And the way that I did it was, I spoke to a cross-sectional group of people from different lines of business in different stages in their development. So people in the field, people in the back shop operations, people that headed the different departments in the company, at the top of the house, at the middle of the house, at the bottom of the house, in a cross-sectional group. And so what I found out, that the core values of the company completely aligned with my core values. And part of my core values are making everyone feel valued, respected, and heard. I talked to people that had left the firm and that came back to the firm, and I wanted to know, why did you leave? And why did you come back? What was it that cost you to leave? What was it that cost you to come back? And I conducted 13 interviews, and there were 13 mutual interviews. And I said to them, for me to do this work, I would have to fall in love. If I don't fall in love, I won't do it, because money's not that important to me. Notice that my core values, money's not anywhere in the topic. And I remember telling my husband, at about my 10th conversation, I hung up and I said, oh, darn, I'm in. I fell in love with this company. And I have to tell you, every single day I fall deeper and deeper in love with the firm and with the individuals in it. Why? Because I feel like I belong. Because 100% of my 10,000 people feel like they belong. How do I know they feel like they belong? I conduct listening sessions. I hear them every single time I am. Today, we're conducting some. And every single time I travel, and I really listen into, but I'm not the only person that listens into, to make sure that people feel heard, respected, valued. It begins with Jamie Dimon at the very top of the house, our chairman and CEO, and it spills over. Jamie Dimon just went into a bus tour listening to different parts in different states of the country. And he brought in the executives with him and brought people into the bus so that he wouldn't just have a 5-minute conversation. He would have a ride, a several-hour ride with individuals to really listen into what is happening. And then there's someone making a list, and I do the same. I listen into, my people do the same, and their people and their people. It happens all the way down, just like a cascade. So inclusivity is not a word. Inclusivity is a verb. It happens when we are able to create an environment where everyone around us feels like they belong, where their thought process is different, and there's nothing better than diversity of thought. And so when we make decisions in a collaborative way, which we do here, and I've always made decisions in a collaborative way. It was so funny going through an interview process because they said, how do you make decisions? I said, I collaborate. I bring people from different thoughts, and I love contrarian opinions. I really welcome them. I love them. I love it when somebody says, Betty, I don't think it's that way. Let me give you this other point of view. I lean in and I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to learn something different. My mind gets to shift. I get to create a different paradigm shift for myself first, and then for others. But we must be able to allow ourselves to step into it with an open heart, with an open mind, to be able to welcome in other points of view. We bring in the way we were raised, and sometimes we have unconscious bias, where we are biased because of the way we're looking at things. And in academia, at the end of my dissertation, I had to write what my bias was, doing the research on core values, so that the reader can see, I wrote this, I am now the authority in the world in this topic. But having said that, I'm humble enough to understand that I came into the group, I came into the study with a bias. And this was my bias, so that the next person that takes my research and takes it further, they can understand that I acted with this bias. So the higher the leader, the more important it is for us to understand and to slow ourselves down and to put a light on ourselves and see what bias are we bringing to the table. It's not any different than when we're talking to our spouse. We come in and the biases are, men are blank. Fill in the blanks if you're a woman. Women are blank. Fill in the blanks if you're a man. So simple. The bias that we were brought up with, and really understanding this is a human being that is in front of me. Let me open myself up and listen into what they're saying with an opportunity to learn.
It's just wonderful to have this perspective and hear you share all this. And we all come from different angles, and we all, if I speak about a team, we're all here for different reasons, and we're all really stepping in to make building bridges, connecting worlds happen. So in this kickoff, I would love just to have very briefly the team unmute and say who they are and what they're doing and why you're here, and then open up for everybody to, if they have questions, to put the questions in the chat so you can ask some questions to Dr. Betty. Just have to put your question in the chat while the team introduces. And we would love to have a deeper conversation together with you to build bridges and connect the worlds, because this is really already a huge global setting what we're doing. So shall we do that? Is that okay with you, Dr. Betty?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So Daphne, can I just give you the floor and say hi, who you are and why you're in the team?
Hi, everybody. My name is Daphne Laan. I am the founder of the Board Whisperers. And in short, we stretch the boundaries of what's possible to make new opportunities happen. So it's all about bringing other perspectives to the table. Maybe to kick off, I'll first hand over to Asha, and then I might have a question, depending if others also bring in questions. Good to see you here.
Thank you so much, Daphne. I love what you do, expanding minds and building bridges. And I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think maybe one shout out on values. I think mine in everything I do is I bring freedom in thinking and doing. So that's something I bring to the table with the rest of us.
I love that. I bring freedom in thinking and doing. Beautiful. Thank you, Daphne.
Thank you. Asha, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Daphne. It's always such a pleasure to work with you. And again, also on this beautiful opportunity. Well, my name is Asha. My name means hope. And it's my calling to give that hope to others. And that's just one of the reasons why I decided to join this initiative, this entity, to build bridges and connect worlds together. And to be honest, my heart is just filled with hope to see people like Dr. Betty, leaders like Dr. Betty, who are willing to show up, to share their time, their knowledge, their experience, their wisdom with all of us. And so many people will see it also through the recordings, and just inspire and empower so many people that we can all create and contribute to a more peaceful world. And what I would like to end with is that it's so important to do this, not only for the human beings, but for all beings, and at least the next 7 generations. So we have a lot of work to do, and I cannot wait to listen in to all the conversations during this online Peace Month and come together and celebrate the International Day of Happiness in a few weeks, September 21st. Thank you.
That's
My name
International
is Asha.
Peace Day.
Yes, international. Oh, I say happiness. I'm sorry.
You stand for happiness too, darling. So it's
Yes,
all,
it's
all right.
It's the International Peace Day. Thank you, Nienke. And with that, I give the floor to Femke.
Thank you, Asha. Dr. Betty Uribe, it's so nice to meet you. I feel so honored. I've heard a lot about you, and from Asha and Nienke as well. And why I'm joining the team is because actually it's who I am. And because since I remember I was a very little girl, I felt like I was here to bring peace and to connect people and to bring some happiness and light in this life. And most my career I've been in media and in politics, and especially in politics I've seen I was joining a grassroots movement just in order to bring all the political parties and colors together, and there was so much polarity and so much friction. So I resigned from my job in politics and I decided to follow my heart and my sole purpose, and that's just bring people together and especially empower young people and to find a more interconnected way to do the job together, and with the feminine and the masculine qualities. And I flourish within a group and by other people. So in order to be happy and to live my full potential, I'm at service and I want to build bridges and work together. And I'm so much happy with my team. And I would ask Carlijn, could you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Femke, if I can just say something about what you just said really quickly, if I may. You talked about the feminine and the masculine energy working together. And I have so much passion about that topic because we are built, our neurological makeup is built different. we are not equal. We come to the table with complementary strengths. And when our world realizes that everyone comes to the table with complementary strengths, we become the yin and the yang. We become better together. And so I use this hashtag for about a decade now, Stronger Together. And we've brought this to my firm, and it really means that we are stronger together when we recognize the strengths and the genius that each individual brings to the room, and that it's so different. And everybody has feminine and masculine. It's not the feminine woman and the masculine man. It's the feminine within us. It's the masculine within us. And how do the two of them cohabitate in a place where we become stronger and we become closer? So I'm so glad. And thank you so much for having this so very important focus. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Carlijn.
Carlijn. I'm a teacher by heart, and I love to play, and it makes me happy that I can join this group of people. I'm wondered, and yeah, I learned so much. What already is in me, it shines. Yeah, I'm a happy person. My English is very
Improving.
complicated. Yeah.
Very good.
And I'm trying, and I learned so much to listen to you, all women and men. Yeah, I'm a teacher. I work with young children and with parents, and yeah, it takes a village to raise a child. So I be part of this group because yeah, it's so important to the next generations that we stand up and come together. Now it's more than time.
Oh my goodness.
So get you. We so get you, Carlijn. And we're so happy to have you on board and bring all the wisdom and heart you have. So thank you
Yes.
so much for being here.
You know,
Yes, thank you.
someone said, I didn't make this up. Someone said, children are the messengers we send to a time we will never see.
Yes.
And I often think about that. And Asha brought the name hope to the table. And it's so important that as we raise our children and that we realize that it's our actions that teach others, especially the children right now.
Yeah.
The children have gone through a huge metamorphosis. Everyone has been affected by this pandemic. No one like the children.
Yes, and if you knew what the pandemic can give you, the bad things, turn around. If you give something else, peace or joy or happiness or hope, or yeah, it turns the world. So I'm very glad.
Absolutely. I was in Africa talking to some of the girls that I've funded scholarships for. And in this school, there were representative children from different villages. Each of the villages were enemies of one another. And these girls were brought in together. After cohabitating with one another, what we found was the children were able to bring the parents in, and the parents began to, instead of meeting each other with arms to kill one another, meeting each other for the purpose of helping their girls, which is not something in Africa that is critically important to put their girls through school. It's normally men. And that happens in a lot of third world countries, as all of you know. And all of a sudden, the villages began to collaborate with one another. So it is possible through the children to change the world and to build those bridges that Nienke and that all of us have been talking about.
Yeah.
Such important work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlijn. So why am I here, Nienke? Well, It was in 2011 when I took my stand to provide the world with a voice. And I've been working with people just to get the message out so we can learn from each other, listen to one another, and really make a connection based on what we can contribute in each other's life rather than pointing out who's best or who is last, or just build the bridge based on what we have to give to the world. And I always say I'm born a mile away from the International Peace Palace, and I've been avoiding being a voice for peace for a long time until my calling was so big I couldn't ignore it any longer. So and I never wanted to do it alone. So I'm thrilled to have a team, and we've been all ups and downs. And then pandemic came in, and then other stuff came up, but we did it threefold, as you shared in your thing as well. Being with yourself, being with the other, and being with the world. That's how we build whatever we do. That's how we build the online Peace Month. That's how we build the live International Peace Day on the 21st of September in the former Royal Palace of Soesdijk in the Netherlands, for the ones who want to be there. But that's also how we set up a 4-month training for projects. For example, it could be your girls in Africa, but we have several projects of what we will support, sponsored projects. So we will uplift them and share their story in January 2022. And we are a movement, and we're not a movement just by the word movement. We are a movement because we take actions. We show the doing. We are the dreamers and the doers, as Daphne always says, and brings it together, make it happen, because we can. And if not us, who will do it? So by saying that, I will just see if there are some questions for Dr. Betty. Maybe Daphne, can you take the lead on that one?
Reinder Westrick has a question. Reinder, do you want to ask your question yourself?
Yeah, that's okay. So I'm only inviting from Carlijn Oudijk. So I was curious enough to see what's the movement about and what's happening. I'm a business coach on strengths, so I help people really understand their talents and strengths. So I was wondering what is in your perspective the connection between values and strengths. So your unique strengths and your core values, what's the connection?
I think there's a connection between values and everything. So very simple. When you take a look at strengths, Marcus Buckingham and the Gallup organization did some research on strengths, and you're talking about your unique abilities. And for everyone,
Yeah, I'm a Gallup certified coach, so that's.
I am too. So we're at the same place.
Okay, that's nice.
Yes. So when you take a look at people's unique abilities, and what I call those your genius, in the whole study from Gallup, the Gallup organization is based on the premise that when you are born, you were born with unique abilities. I call them your genius. Mm-hmm. And whatever your unique abilities are, if you were focused on those unique abilities, then you created some neural pathways in your brain. That's what they call them, neural pathways. That means that they're like super highways in your brain of your strengths. And so if you focus on your strengths, then those neural pathways are going to be cemented and they're going to be stronger. So the throughput through your strengths is going to be much higher. For example, take Bach, Vivaldi, Handel, Beethoven, any one of the great masters. If their mother said, you know, Beethoven, you're really good at music, but you're not really good at history. Let me just get someone to teach you more history because your grades are not so good. Then, you know, he would have become maybe mediocre in history because that wasn't a super strength in him. But instead, what they did was they focused on the music part of it, the arithmetic part of it. And so they became incredibly better. So the whole idea from Gallup organization and this whole strength conversation is if you focus on your strengths, on your unique ability, or what I call your genius, and everybody, by the way, has a genius. they focus on the top 5 and they measure 30 plus, almost 37, 39 strengths. And so they focus on whatever is whatever those super highways are. And you can go into the Gallup organization, Google that and say, I want to take the Strength Finders test. It's about a 30-minute test. Don't think about it, just take it. And you will be amazed at what you find, because you will find what is your unique ability. So what does the unique ability have to do with your core values? I think that there's a symbiotic relationship, Reinhard, from both of them. One can't live without the other because it is you. It is part of you. And so every single one of us is born with a strength. And if you want to know more about your strengths, talk to Reinhard. He's a certified specialist in this. And so I'm sure that you can actually teach this course on strengths, but there's a symbiotic relationship between values and strengths. So if one of my strengths is to be a maximizer, for example, and maximizer in the Strength Finders is the ability to take good and make it great. The maximizer, every strength has a double-edged sword. So for example, for the maximizer in the Gallup organization, mediocrity is not allowed. We have no, very little patience for mediocrity. And so when we find mediocrity around us, we kind of don't like it very much. And our patience begins to come down. Now, when I tell people I'm a maximizer, my father was a maximizer. And so the way that he did everything had to be perfect. But what he did, the maximizers, what they do, for example, is it's like Michelangelo. He said, the David was there all along. I just needed to chip away at what wasn't David, and then the David came through. That's a typical maximizer. They will be chipping away, and you feel like, oh my goodness, I can never do anything that's good enough for this person. Well, that's not it. So there's a double-edged sword of that strength. Now, how does that align with my personal core values? My personal core values, one of them is making people feel good about themselves, right? How do I do that when I'm chipping away at them and they feel criticized? And so how do I do that when I come into an organization and I take a good organization and I make it great, or my people make it great? I bring in the people in and I say, hey, I'm a maximizer. When I'm chipping away at you, that means that I'm helping you create that David. Your David is already there. And so I create trust. By creating trust, how do I create trust? I say what I'm going to do. And I do what I say I'm going to do. And I create, the best way to create trust is what Bianca said, create results, get it done. When you get it done.
I'm an activator, so I like to take action. Yeah.
Exactly. So that is how I see the two of them coincide and cohabitate with one another. You can't have one without the other.
Thank you, Betty.
I've never had that question asked. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm aware of the time, and I realized that Daphne, you mentioned in your introduction you had a question too.
Yes, I do have a question. What I'm curious about, I love the part where you said when you're in an organization, listening trickles down in hierarchy. But often in new organizations, there's also such a thing as unwritten rules. And I wonder, especially when it comes to underrepresented voices, how do you ensure that those also come to the table? What is your experience in that?
I love your question, Daphne. Thank you so much for asking it, because the unwritten rules are in family units, they are in business, they are in schools, they are everywhere you go. You go from Italy to Germany, and there is a different set of unwritten rules. You go from Japan to China, there is a different set of unwritten rules. You go from Singapore to Thailand, there is a different set of unwritten rules. Those I call culture. The unwritten rules are culture. So you walk into a different culture and it feels different. You're in Singapore and it's absolutely beautiful. And there's some research that is happening in Singapore. Singapore has lost its passion. And one of my girlfriends, Dr. Mary Helene Mordino Young from USC, was asked to go and do a study in Singapore to see how they can bring passion. It's really interesting because in Thailand, right next door, you walk into Thailand and there is passion in abundance. So how does that happen with two neighboring countries? So your question is, how is it that the unwritten rules happen, and how can we make the unheard be heard? We had a situation in North America where the Chinese were affected. And this particular culture is not a culture that speaks up a lot. And a lot of our cultures are like that. We keep the secrets of the family in the closet. We do that in Colombia, in my culture. We don't talk about our imperfections. We keep those in the closet. So how do we get someone like that to really understand? I think the way to do it is to create common ground. And it's the same way that we create trust. And the way that we create trust is by showing up figuratively naked. What I mean by that is we show up to the individuals with allowing that person to be who they are and not expecting them to be anything else than who they are, valuing the person for who they are, understanding that in this culture, people are not going to speak with words, but they speak with actions. So changing the way that we're listening into that particular culture or that particular individual in those unspoken rules and taking the time to understand. My daughter married a gentleman who is Mormon. When she was dating him, I called my Mormon friends and I said, I need you to teach me everything there is to know about the Mormon church because I want to be respectful. When I go to see their family, when we unite our families, when the wedding happens, I need to be able to be respectful to the culture. My daughter is becoming part of this, and I need to respect this. It's by taking the time to understand that we don't understand everything. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to know. What is not okay is to stay in our ignorance and to assume that everyone has to morph into our way of thinking. The way to get those under and unspoken rules and to really understand what I call culture, those are culture, is to get ourselves outside of ourselves and allow that other culture to come into our knowledge so that we can now speak in their language. And it's not the language, Dutch, English, Chinese. It's the language of culture. It's the language of human, to be able to speak in that human language. When I spoke to this group of PhDs at the World Bank, I had to speak their language for them to be able to understand, for them to be able to open up. And so I took them through a set of exercises that would open up their minds, the way their minds work. And then the moment it opened up, it took the other side of the brain to begin to connect the dots for them to be able to begin to open up. It's not easy, but it's always simple.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Daphne. It's so important in the world today. Thank you so much.
We had one more question, and then I like to wrap up and just respect your time in the very early morning. So Qatar, all the way from Canada, who is, by the way, in Dr. Silla O'Worthy's group. So it's all family, isn't it? So Qatar, you had a question too.
Yes, thank you so much, Nienka. And Dr. Aribi, it's such a pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about you the last couple of years. My question is, when we're dealing with people who have a very high need for power, especially in the current political landscape that's quite divided, they often speak of the same values. And yet what those values look like in action is very different. How do we bring some cohesion or some harmony across that divide?
That is probably the question of the day. And I have to tell you that I often, when I was growing up, I thought, oh my goodness, the world, I've got to change the world. And I've got to be able to go to different parts of the world to be able to change. I was in, oh my goodness, in Tel Aviv and at the University of Tel Aviv doing some studies. And I noticed by crossing the borders, either to Jordan, to Bethlehem, it doesn't matter. And I couldn't sleep at night that night at 2:00 in the morning. I actually wrote an article that I published on LinkedIn. I couldn't sleep thinking about sometimes it's histories and sometimes it's generations. Like in this part of the world, there's generations of differences that are happening. And like the unspoken rules that we just talked about, that Daphne asked about, the cultures in the different worlds. Sometimes we can't change their world, but we can change our world. So what happens? What happens is the higher we get or the more influence we have. Look at this room. Just look at the people in this room. We have people from different parts of the world. We have people's worlds. Every mind, every head, every human is a different world. And we have different connections. So some of us in this room have thousands of connections that are of a different part of the world. Or for example, Carleen, is that correct? I want to pronounce your name correctly. Okay. So your connections may be moved into more educational people who are in education. Someone like me, I have people who are in business, and someone like Femke are people who are influencers that really get people to think in a different way, or someone like Daniel that maybe his group is different. So all of a sudden we're in this room and we have a collective, and we're able to become, instead of a pebble in the pond, what I call a pebble in the pond. When you were little, you threw in the little pebble in the pond and then it created this ripple. All of us together become a boulder in the ocean. So the way to do it, the best way to do it, is by doing what we say we're going to do, by creating action, what Nienke started to say, and I'm going to bring it right back to Nienke and right back to the very beginning, by creating action that creates results. By being congruent with our core values, and back to Reinhardt's conversation around strengths and values, by utilizing our strengths, being aligned with our core values. Don't worry about what you're not good at. Focus on what you are really good at. Utilize your core values, stay aligned, create action that creates results. Then you will build trust, and then other people will follow. But it isn't until you do all of these, by connecting different people and bringing diversity of thought, so that you're not just myopically focused on what you already know, but being completely open to letting other people's in and creating the action that creates results. Then and only then can we create hope. Then can we create enthusiasm. Then can we create team collaboration, communication. And that is the only way that our world will be able to continue to build bridges and connect the world.
Thank you so much. That's really, really helpful.
Well, we discussed, is there one final thing you want to say, but you gave such a beautiful summary. Is there anything else what we missed, Dr. Betty, what we can wrap up in a minute? Because I will be respectful for your time. Is there anything you still want to add?
Well, I will give you 30 seconds because I do have a meeting right now that I need to run to. We are in the business of humanity. all of us. We are in the business of people. And when we bring 100% of ourselves with humility and bring our strengths to the table, all of them, aligned with our core values, that is when the magic happens. I invite all of you to join this movement. It's an incredible movement. And thank you so much for doing this amazing work, building bridges and connecting worlds. There's nothing more important right now in the history of humankind than doing this. This is amazing work. Thank you so much. I'm truly humbled to be invited to this group and to be invited to be part of this conversation. Have a wonderful week.
Thank
and
you.
happy Peace Month.
Thank you so much. And we let you go. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. And follow the online Peace Month. Just follow us. Thank you.
Thank you to the team. That was a beautiful session.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.